tiger.
This is what the sound of
Yeah,
my frequency sounds like.
and we are live.
Yes.
Coming in with the eye of the tiger. Welcome, everyone. Leslie and I are coming at you guys live today to share some really, really beautiful experiences that we both were able to experience in Arizona about a week and a half ago, right? It was about a week and a half ago that we were there.
Yep.
And some of you have been expressing interest about what exactly this is with this spiritual liberation, but we're like, we're going to start it off with a little bit more fun than that. So we're going to talk all about popping Leslie's spiritual cherry, going from being spiritually curious, right? Having some interest in it, being open to the possibilities, to now really stepping into and embracing that. So, Leslie, I would love for you to just take a moment and kind of explain a little bit about yourself and about where you kind of started before we get into what actually occurred in Arizona.
Yeah. What's up, everybody? My name's Leslie Liu. I'm also known as the Woman Warrior, and I'm the founder of a company called Reclaiming Your Courage. And I'm also the co founder of a global women's movement called Warrior Queens Rise. And I'm an international speaker and humanitarian. And what I really do is I help women create boundaries with heart. I help them really through transformative self defense and really what it means to protect themselves energetically. So, I am a mom of two kids. I was born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm a wife, I'm a dog mom. And, most of my life, I've always been, I would say, intuitive, have a level of being an empath. I always just kind of thought, spiritual energies and the things I was feeling was just cultural. So there's always been glimpses of that in my life. And so, yeah, like if I'm at a starting point of popping my cherry, and as we go into the story, like I was someone coming into this experience that was just at a point of being open to receiving. And I think that that was the biggest shift because, like, if you asked me like 2 years ago about anything we're about to go into, like I'd be like, that's woo, like I'm not woo, that's woo. There's like a certain perception I have of that. And I think that there's some influencer life or ways in which mainstream media has like maybe like almost deflected and not have me embrace my spiritual side. And that's the beauty of the synergy I have with Heather of like just having that trust and that respect. And so today really talking about like, all right, there's a courtship, um and some cuddling and smooth, like, smooching with spiritualism. But this really popped my cherry where I'm like, ooh, okay, now we going deep. Like we had some sex, and now I'm fully embracing that energy, right? Whether that's your sensual energy or your spiritual energy. And so it's just been beautiful to see like what's unfolded.
Yeah, for sure. And I really feel that being in that energy of Arizona, being kind of close to the vortex, right? There's vortexes in Sedona there. That really helped to add to the experience, as well as the level of trust that we have, with one another and also with our friend Jessica, who she's going to be coming live tomorrow to talk about her experience. But just that sisterhood and unconditional love and trust, just surrendering to the process. And so throughout our stay, I wanted to allow Leslie and Jessica to experience some of my gifts, right? So the first night there, I shared a mediumship experience with Jessica. And then the next day, Leslie had been experiencing some discomfort. And so when we got back to our Airbnb for the evening, we were attending another event throughout the day. But when we got back there, I was like, hey, like let's give you some Reiki, let's experience this, and hopefully this will help with some of that discomfort. And as with any session, when I'm doing anything spiritually or energetically, I always open up sacred space, put up layers of protection for what is about to occur. And then I ask any spirit guides and any loved ones in spirit to join to contribute to the healing. And then I called in the angels and I called in God, and I stepped into my center of knowing and trust. And when I placed my hands on Leslie's shoulders, which is how I begin every Reiki session that I do, is connecting with the client, with the energy. But what happened next was just magical, because I went into a state of trance, and it was a divine gift that was given to me in this new method of healing that Leslie was the first to experience. So, do you want to explain briefly what that kind of was like for you? I know at the end of it, right? So Leslie had not experienced Reiki from me before, and she was like, "That was so powerful," and I was like, "That usually does not happen. Like, that is not what a typical session is." And she was like, "Holy crap! Like, I didn't realize that." So yeah. Do you
Yeah.
want to just kind of go over your experience with that?
Yeah, there's some two key details here, because what was so strange about that day to me is like, I was like, I don't know, I don't feel great. And I'm someone who like is pretty like in like really in tune with my energy, and it's very rare for me to have a lower back, like unless I'm on my period. I'm like, I don't know. Something is just, I remember going to Heather and being like, I don't know. Something just is not sitting well with me. I don't know. And the night prior, because we have this circle of trust, I remembered saying a couple of things specifically that showed up in the session. I specifically said, you know what? Sometimes I feel like my anger is not my own sometimes. That was kind of a key thing I shared. And then something that I just like openly said to them, which I hadn't said to anyone, is like, I don't know, like sometimes I feel like I've been stabbed before, right? Like I'm an embodiment of a warrior. That's just who I am. But that imagery and that dream has come up for me a lot. And so the next day, yeah, like I didn't tell the girls this, but when I woke up and I looked in the bathroom mirror, there was something on my right rib cage that it was like a round circle, and it was a deep purplish black circle. And I was like, "Oh my goodness, like what is that?" It's not like I hit anything, or it just was trippy to me, but I didn't relay that to anybody. And so when I was lying down in on this like turf in the backyard near a fire pit, hello, in Phoenix degree like heat, and I'm someone who runs hot. So the minute that Heather was describing to me, like, you might experience some sensations, the minute she put her hands on me, my whole body felt cooling sensations. And that was wild to me because I usually run hot, and we're literally probably 2 feet away from a fire pit. So that was really, really freaking interesting to me. Um, yeah, so I don't know how much further you wanted me to go and kind of relaying, but that already was like 60 seconds in.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and I couldn't recall what had happened, right? So it was almost as if I was sitting on the sidelines, waiting to come back in after the session was complete. So, and that's not the case now, but for these first two sessions, I really feel, because this was divinely gifted to me from Source, that they took the wheel, Source took the wheel and guided, and Leslie and Jessica were able to relay back to me what had occurred. And we also had recorded it, because Jessica is a social media girl. And so she's always like recording things for content and stuff. And she helps me with that as well. So she happened to catch all of this on camera, which was perfect, because then I could go back and really see, okay, this is what I did. This is how I did that. But basically there was Reiki involved in it. There was no doubt about that, with the energy healing and some of the sensations that Leslie was able to feel in that. But also there was past lives that was brought up. And I'm just going to say this here for everyone watching, that I'm not trying to change your belief system when it comes to past lives. You believe what you believe, right? But in this process, I ask that individuals be curious for the sake of allowing their body to release whatever is being stored there. We know that our issues are stored in the tissues, that emotions can get trapped inside the body, which leads to dis-ease of the body. So it's not good to hold on to things. And oftentimes when we experience a traumatic experience, whether that be in this lifetime or, possible past life connection, or even generational, right? That those can be stored in the body as well. So what was really beautiful with Leslie's experience was that we were able to pinpoint this abdominal discomfort for her stemming from a previous lifetime, attaching an emotion to that, or she was able to put an emotion, a name to the feeling, right? Not like she was attaching it, but more of like discovering what emotion that was in her body so that it could be released.
Yeah. As soon as the minute that Heather put her hands on me and I had that cooling sensation, I shit you not, y'all, my lower back eased up instantly. And then she did ask me for consent around, are you open to a past life reading? Because this is seemingly what your body needs right now. And I said, sure, never even thought about it. And so I remember kind of the first one being like, okay, well, in this time period, it's almost like Salem witch time period in which you were hung. You were hung. You were a healer. You were hung, and being persecuted for having the beliefs that you did. And the thing is like I didn't reject these ideas, right? Like that could be a lot to take in, but I was open to it. So that was kind of when she was in my head area, and then when she moved to my midsection area, man, to really have her express to me, you know what? Now we're in a medieval time. Now you are a peasant servant and you are someone who was stabbed multiple times and bled out, that it was due to a betrayal, but you died protecting a community, is wild shit, right? But like I'm like, oh, it makes sense now. It makes sense. And she asked me to tie an emotion to it, and I will tell you that Heather helped me release 20 to 30 years worth of stuff that I was holding on to, where it was like I really thought it was the anger that I was trying to work through, but really in that session I was able to identify this is really a deep sadness. If I'm connecting to something, it's like I feel really sad. Because of this betrayal and because of these things. And she asked me if I was willing to let that go. So her doing her in all her power, it did release me. I physically felt my stomach. It's almost like a really tight ship knot, those really thick knots.
Right.
And I could feel it unraveling, kind of like when you squish a piece of paper. My stomach just totally relaxed. Right? And I felt so much relief, and then she just intuitively knew where to went and like go, and like I released myself and I cried so much. Which is huge for me, for someone who has been strong, who has suppressed for so long. It was like so much, but I felt so safe and I felt so comfortable and I felt so much relief. And I felt archangel wings, as we call that in. I felt somebody cupping under my shoulders and lifting me, if I could say that. And here's the thing. At the end of the session, Heather intuitively calls for you to be in a final position. And so what she did at the end of my session is she put my hands up here to my forehead. And so when she got out of her trance state, I was in this position, and that really tripped me out because I'm like, Heather, how did you know to put me in that position? And she's like, that's what I was called to do. Right. And I'm, without her knowing that that is, from a cultural standpoint, right? From Asian American standpoint, from me, having a deep rootedness to Muay Thai culture and martial arts, like in Asia, we believe the head is such a sacred space. It's where we bow. It's how we show the greatest level of gratitude and respect. It's how I receive things. It's how I give things, right? And she put me in that position without ever seeing me doing that. So I'll kind of pause right there because there's so much that happened after that session. But like that was 30 minutes, you guys. So in a spiritual liberation session for 30 minutes, she literally, I was so happy, and I was like, Heather, like, I can't, what you just gave me was like 20 to 30 years of pain and suffering released out of my body.
Yeah. And what we've been noticing too is that it's not even just about that moment in time, that there's been kind of a ripple effect on how this session has allowed you to be and who you get to step into. It's almost like it released something that had been holding you back from truly embracing who Leslie really is deep inside. And we saw some shifts like immediately the next day, right? There was just like, even in her morning, like she's not typically an early morning riser, but if you want to share briefly about that.
Yeah, because Heather had said, I'd be curious, drink a lot of water. I'd be curious to see how you feel in the next day or so. So just like Frankenstein, y'all, my body woke up at 4:30 in the morning, ploop, plopped up, and then I just like go through the, wave to people in the living room, and then go immediately out in my moo to the backyard. And I do daily spiritual practice like every day, y'all, for at least 30 minutes to an hour. But this was different. This was different in the sense that what I was doing was, I was in a trance state. So in that time period of what I thought was 15 minutes, to be quite honest, I wrote a manifesto, a woman warrior manifesto that I will be using in my program when I coach women. I did a lot of martial arts movement. I did a lot of chanting, things that I've known in my life, but this suddenly came up. And then I did a type of traditional Muay Thai dance that I don't even know how to do because it's something you have to study. It takes people years to do that, and I was able to do it. I was doing something, you guys, and then I just remember bowing and being in this position, and then opening my eyes, and it was like sunrise, right? And then Jessica, who was kind of witnessing and doing her own process in the morning, was like, I was like, yeah, that was about 15 minutes, right? And she's like, what are you talking about? You were out there for at least 45 minutes. like I was like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, you guys, I don't get up at 4:30 in the morning, like I'm a night, it's just like something came over me. Something came over me energetically. And for the rest of that week, that every day something new happened during that spiritual hour. I did something different. The way that I spoke, the way I speak about myself and my work and my business, it all was changing. So yeah, I mean, and then the next day when I woke up, I looked in the mirror and I was like, huh, that bruise and that circle that was near my rib cage. I showed Heather and Jessica, and I was like, I wish I would have shown you this yesterday of how dark this was, like Sharpie black. And this was like non-existent. Like it was pretty much gone. And it just,
Yeah.
it was very inexplicable.
Yeah. When you get bruises like that, typically it takes like weeks to heal, you know, and for it to just to dissolve within like not even 24 hours is pretty magical. It's a
Yeah, and
lot
I
of
think
stuff. But
it's a lot of stuff, right? And so we're all looking at, do you see this happening? Do you believe this is happening? Do you see this? And the thing that strikes me about Heather and how powerful and masterful she is like, okay, I have that trust with her, but I kept thinking of myself as separate from the process. Like, oh, okay, like I'm just here being open. But she mentioned earlier that these two sessions were ones in which she has no recollection. And she later told me, like, you've got to understand how powerful you are, right? Like, I am a conduit, but you are also a conduit. So this doesn't just happen. So that all, like, for her to relay back to me, you're part of the process. You are part of what's creating this, was also something that like was overwhelming to me because I'm like, I don't understand. Right? But
yeah.
she's drawing from what messages she's receiving, but also what I'm exuding, I guess you could say it like that. I don't know how else to
Yeah.
describe that.
Yeah. When I think like the a big part of it, and this is something that we kind of discovered later because um my beautiful coach had offered for me to stay in Arizona. I was supposed to be leaving Monday morning, and when she heard of the transformation that Leslie had experienced and Jessica had experienced, she invited me to stay so that I could gift some of the women at her retreat with these sessions, which was huge because she has her routine, she has things planned out, right? I'm sure she had everything for this retreat, the content she was going to teach and everything planned out for months. And she completely wiped out half of a day so that I could come and share this. And it wasn't only just to benefit the women there, it was for me as well, because it helped to solidify and reinforce this. Because I was able in those sessions to be more conscious and more aware. And I feel that with Jessica and Leslie, that was my way of learning through observing and through them, you know, relaying that back to me. And also the fact that both of them were so receptive and open and trusting and like have this unconditional love and no judgment. You know, like even when we were at the Airbnb, I I can sense things with spirit. A lot of people can, right? But some things started happening, like lights were flickering in the other room, and I like go around the corner, like, what? Okay. And then and they're just like, who's in there, girl? Like, it's just like no judgment, you know, like, or like, oh, that was your mom, Jess. That was just your mom, whatever. And they're like, you're just so nonchalant. But we were able to be ourselves. And in that type of loving environment, this was able to be opened up. There's no way that I could have had this occur with a regular client. They'd be like, what the fuck are you doing? What are you doing to me? Right.
It's
Um,
wild, right? And there is something about Phoenix where I'm like, that already kind of going into it was a portal in itself. We created a portal wherever we were at that Airbnb. And for those of you watching, I had gotten a glimpse of what Heather is capable of because I did a mediumship session with her actually a couple of weeks prior to the retreat. And like that already, you guys, was something that was so amazing to me because I was like, there's no way she would have known this family member. Like, that was my first exposure in like Heather's gift, but that was just scratching the fucking surface, you guys, because seeing her in her element and her truest power in Phoenix and her really rising, right, was a beautiful thing. I knew she had abilities, right? I knew she had this ability to receive messages because I spoke to a loved one that had passed. And I was like, there's no way anyone would have known that. So she's not faking it for sure. And I'm just going to throw that out there because I'm like, well, I've had experiences before. They seemed a little fakish or a little whatever contrived, but there's just no way. She knew things that no one would know. So that's kind of like the icing on the cake, so to speak. I cannot tell you how powerful Heather is, uh, in the sense of what was happening. Like, she was getting supercharged in Arizona. So we created that space at Airbnb. Um, our wonderful coach had the ability to recognize and create space for her, which is phenomenal, right? And then for me to have the highest honor of being able to sit in on these sessions with these women at this retreat was like, I just want to create a safe space for Heather, and I just want to create a safe space for these women, especially for some of them who are not spiritual anything, but just trusting. A lot of them were like, Leslie, I'm doing it because of your belief and what you experienced. And so that was another set of wild couple of days, because here I am cracked open and vulnerable, where I was experiencing everything in day one. Everything, you guys. Beautiful revelations, ways to forgive myself, ways to forgive loved ones that were really holding me back. And then I said, you know what? Let me help sit in on some of these sessions. And then things started to present themselves to me that I can't even explain to you, of like, wait, like, I thought I was just an observer here, but there's some things specifically happening where I'm like, wait, am I a participant in this? And Heather's like, you are. And that's what I'm saying is wild to me, is like, I think I'm just, being a good friend or being a good person and being there. I'm always in this protective mode. But she's like, I had to relate to her later on in each of the sessions. Significant things were happening, you guys, significant, that I was relaying back to Heather and back to these women. And I was like, you've got to believe me. This is what I experienced during your session. And a lot of it had to do with having visions, seeing future, right? I don't see too much of the past, but seeing future and having things come to me happened the entire week.
Yeah. It started to open up more gifts, more intuition, the third eye, right? There was I know some of the women had mentioned feeling like almost like a pulsating in their third eye. I had to leave after doing the sessions, which was really hard because I wanted to be able to stay there and hold space with everyone as they started to open up after these sessions, because I could tell just from Leslie and Jessica that so much gets to shift the days following that. But thankfully, Leslie and Jess were able to be there with those ladies in those moments. But I myself, when I was at home, like could feel like wow, 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 wow in my head and stuff. So yeah, definitely some things were opening up for everyone in that experience.
Girl, when I
And
came back, I
ongoing.
think I slept for like 4 days straight. I was just like, my body and my nervous system is rocked in a good way. And outside of all the greatness that was happening at the retreat and the content around abundance and rebirthing, I will tell you this, right? Like, what do these spiritual liberation sessions do in the moment? Just is phenomenal from a standpoint of physical relief, emotional relief, mental relief, right? And so what does that do for me now that it's been a week and a half and 2 weeks? I am still really calm and grounded. I have a different lens towards myself and the people that, I have tried to mend the relationships with. It has helped me revamp, not really revamp, but really own the shit I want to offer in my business, right? Because I think the fear is like, oh my God, if I really reveal to people, like, who am I talking about energetic protection and like tapping into your ancestral strength, right? Like, that's wild, right? But it's at core who I am, right? Like, and if I say that I am an ancestral warrior, it's because I have the strength of 10,000 ancestors behind me. And because of these sessions, I know that to be true now. I've always had inklings of that. Like, yeah, I'm strong and like I believe so much. But through Heather's work, it's really like, no, you do have an entire spiritual team that is supporting you. And for me, that is huge, because even in these sessions with her, I was like, oh, well, maybe you're not going to like really call in anybody. I don't have a big family, or there's not too many people that are on the other side waiting for me. Like, I was already protecting myself, you guys, because I'm just like, I don't know. I'm kind of always been a loner. I don't have a big family. But through Heather's work, it was really like, no, dude, like you have like, you have a whole hemisphere. And I felt that during the week, during our retreat. Like, I could feel it. I could feel it as I was grounding myself into the earth, the things I was doing every day to feel connected and grounded to source and the universe, and help, like, how to keep myself grounded. And so today, I still don't know the total wholeness of all of the benefit of this, you guys, but I will say it's a game changer in how I express gratitude in my life, how I accept things, and the things I specifically want to create in my business. So from my personal life, and how I am able to energetically like show people in my life, like they notice a difference, so we're able to have a more fulfilling life. And then when it comes to business, it's really me taking the marker and being like, fuck this, I'm going to do this instead, or I'm going to charge this because I am high value and I'm high output. I know the transformations and what I can do for women, and it's a deep inner knowing, and I've had some level of that, but like this is just like the solidification and the reinforcement and cementing it into the ground. Like, I feel grounded.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Who would have thought? Who would have thought?
I don't even know, y'all. And in a week's time, and then Heather and I will be in Kenya together in about a week and a half for our Warrior Queens Rise, like Stand Together, Rise Together speaking tour. It'll be my second time in Kenya. And I will say that stepping into my power, Kenya was a big part of it. But the message I am going to bring and what I'm going to say, I can't even tell you what that's going to be now, like 10 times amplified. Being able to help these kids really tap into messages of like, you really are never alone, right? You really aren't. These kids are orphans. These kids feel like they have nothing. But like, I keep soul checking myself of like, what's the message I want to give? And I think a lot of it is going to be tied into like, you're never truly alone because you have your ancestral strength, right? Like, you can still rise and get up, right? Like, look at this land. Like, Kenya is such an ancient place, right? It's like a birthplace of like humanity. And so for Heather and I to be there, I feel like that's another portal and vortex. But like, to be able to put my foot on that earth, to be able to touch the clay, to be able to touch the dirt, to be able to touch these souls and help heal some of these kids, that's a visceral response I have, right? That's a primal instinct that I have. And so it doesn't ultimately matter what I'm rehearsing or what I'm thinking, because when we get there, it'll change. And whatever comes out of my mouth for speaking for 7 minutes is what it is going to be, because that's what it's meant to be. Right?
Well, and it's part of surrendering too, and being present and being in that moment and knowing what is the perfect thing to say to those kids, right? There's going to be thousands of kids just waiting to hear what comes from your mouth, and it will be perfect.
It will, as it is, right? Like, I think when we're speakers or we're international speakers, we focus on the deck and the slides and the things you want to say and the timing. And I'm like, no, like Kenya and this experience with you and these spiritual liberation sessions is like, no, like, screw it. I might scrap the whole thing. And now when I show up to conferences and things, I'm like, oh yeah, like, I'm not even going to be talking about the thing I thought. right? Because it's coming from, I
Yeah.
don't even remember my talks, to be honest, right? Like, I'm like, because whatever is going to be downloaded to me and whatever I feel compelled to speak, like, I'm sure it makes a lot of organizers and people like perplexed, but I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do this. Um, and that's a very beautiful, like, marriage and place that I've come to, thanks to the work that Heather has really helped me get into a place of, like, I feel like I've always had certain pieces of stuff and it was kind of a web, right? And I think I've gotten lost in that web, whether that's misguided or not having any guidance. And so the beauty about having someone as masterful as Heather is that all of that can get integrated, that there's intricacies in these webs where you don't have to feel suffocated by it. You don't have to be overwhelmed by it. And I think that if we're talking about my spiritual cherry, like, a lot of times I've been overwhelmed with what I have received or experienced. And there was never anyone to talk to about it, because it's like, I'm going to get shunned by my community,
Right.
right? Like, and we talk about this all the time. I'm like, yeah, if I could look back at abilities and gifts from my early childhood, I can recall them, but it's not until I have that relationship with Heather and just, people that I trust so much and love from a very pure place, that I could even be open as a 42-year-old to receive all the things. And everything just made sense for me. And that's just the best way
Yeah.
that I could describe it for anyone,
Right.
is that it just made sense. It's not like she's telling me things that I don't know. Internally, I know. It's just validating and solidifying what's already there. And I know that seems really intangible, you guys, but that's what these spiritual liberation sessions do. It's like nothing she told me was a shock to me.
Yeah.
Right? So, that's the beauty of this.
Yeah. Well, and at a soul level, you already know everything that was revealed. And it's more about getting things out of the way that were holding you back from being able to really step into and embrace who you truly are. It's remembering who you are, because we're so conditioned by our family, by our culture, by the world, to be and act a certain way, and certain things are favored over others. And hopefully now the world's starting to be more aware and awakened to the fact that some of these gifts and these abilities that children innately have are not a bad thing, right? Because that's
Yeah.
part of the reason for myself personally that I shoved a lot of my gifts down for quite some time, until I was introduced to Reiki, and that just blasted that door wide open. So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
two, you have to, if you are wanting more when it comes to your way of being, when it comes spiritually, right? It's really about asking for it, because God, source, the universe, the angels, they're around you all the time, but you really have to ask for their assistance in order to receive. And there was a moment during this event that we were attending, and I was sitting next to my coach, and I said, a lot of the people in the room were high impact driven leaders with really large goals to leave a lasting impact, to leave a legacy on the world, on their families. And I was having a moment, and I was like, I am just a medium. I'm just a Reiki master. And she's like, girl, there's so much more to you than that. And then that evening is when it's like, all right, she's ready. She wants more. She knows she's meant for more. Well, let's give it to her.
Right. It's specifically taking out the word just, right? Because when we're like, I'm just a self-defense coach. I just teach women self-defense. It's like, we know, and now I know, I'm like, you are never going to learn in the way holistically that I teach it from anyone in the world. I know that.
Yeah.
You'll never experience that. But the same thing is, like, because I've experienced what Heather has to offer, I'm like, no, no, no. Like, she is not just a spiritual. I'm like, no, no, girl, you are not just you You are phenomenally this and masterful. And I keep using the words around masterful because there is a difference between someone who is just curious spiritually and leading a business, right? Where there's that flat line, and then someone who's masterful and skilled. And I would say that it wasn't just me and just being open. You have to be masterful and skillful to draw out and hone in what you manage to hone in, right? So I just want you to know. And by you helping me get rid of my pipes, like my clogged pipes, like I'm spiritually constipated, I got all these blockages. You basically were like Drano. And so now it's Dranoed out. And now you are the highest level of high impact leaders, Heather, because you helped me Drano out my system. Now I can go make even a greater impact than what I was doing. And I was doing okay, right? Like Asian F style, but now I can't even wrap my head around what I'll be able to do. I still can't. But that's you. That's you. Like, I'm constipated, and now I'm gonna, like, it's gonna be a shitstorm for the world, because it's just like, whoa, what is she gonna do? And I thank you for that, because we know in Eastern medicine or spiritual practice, it's like, if your throat chakra is clogged up, and certain things and traumas and experiences, we have trouble taking ownership of our voice and really utilizing our voice. And so I am so familiar with my voice. I'm like, there's things that are changing, and I still, and so I only know that can do greater in my family, in my humanitarian work, and in my business, because I'm like, yeah, things are still shifting till this day. That was a week and a half ago. That hasn't worn off, you guys. Like, each day I'm like, I don't know. I was chanting to a paycheck that I was, depositing into an ATM. Literally, I was in my car chanting, and this lady next to me is like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, I just want to change my frequency and how I speak to money, how I perceive this, and my worthiness and value. Like, I'm just so freaking thankful to be able to deposit this check right now. And that's different. And, people take notice. And she's like, okay, that's different. But I didn't give a shit. I don't care. But it's just, that's
Right.
who I be. That's how I operate. Everything is through a martial artist lens, through ancestors, showing gratitude, prayer, meditation. So I own that. Whatever, like, and it's because of how powerful you are and what you are offering to people. So if you are someone who is wondering about these things, it's like, you just come with a level of openness. I didn't come into it with an intention of, like, asking XYZ questions. I'm just open to receiving. And that was the biggest shift, is like, hey, I don't, whatever you got for me, Heather, sure, yes, you have my consent, and whatever comes, comes. I'm not thinking of an outcome, and I'm not looking for a specific outcome.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Leslie, for coming on here and sharing your experience. I can't wait to see what unfolds in Kenya. I'm sure there'll be a lot more fun had there.
And same for you. I'm like, you literally, I will probably see you flapping away with your wings. I'm like, she's going to be levitating. That's how much
right?
she's.
That's the word. Like, am I levitating?
I'll be like, yeah, you are, girl. I got on video.
Yep. I was like, get it on camera, girl.
I got you. But
awesome.
I just love you so much. And thank you for sharing your gift with me. And it's, like I told you when you did the session, is just like, I don't know how I could ever repay you for what you have given to me, because it has helped me heal through pain and suppression that I was holding on to for so long. And so now I can be at peace and have some clarity and be open to what might be coming, because I'm open.
Yeah. It was my pleasure, Leslie. Thank you for being there for me as this unfolded. because I don't think that it would have happened with anyone else.
Yes. Awesome. All right. Love you, girl.
Love you too. Bye.